If I wanted to finally improve my chess level as fast as possible, these are the two crucial rules I would focus all of my attention on. This is your step towards chess mastery you will regret not making sooner. I'm gonna illustrate these two powerful rules on the example of this very important classical tournament game that I have played as white against a 2450 higher rated international master in the German Bundesliga, very important game. And I have started here as white. I wanted to be as active as possible, which is always the first thing you want to do. You want to apply pressure on your opponent. And let me show you how it happened and where I succeeded versus where I have spoiled my chances, but that is so instructive so that you can learn from my mistakes. I have played here the move c4. So the first step towards a great game of chess is always fighting for the initiative. This is the first stage of the game where you build this foundation of playing a great game of chess, of creating those winning chances for you. The real question is, of course, how do you do it the right way? Well, in the opening, you always and always try to achieve three things. You fight for the center. That's what I did with those d4, c4 moves. You develop all of your pieces because you want to invite everybody to the party. You want to get ready for the fight. And you want to make sure that your king is safe because it's not the piece that you want to be involved in your real chess battle, in your struggle to give a checkmate to your opponent. So that's what I'm focusing on. I played here bishop to d2. My opponent started very actively. He was attacking me from the very first moves, but I don't mind, and you shouldn't either. Instead, you should combine dealing with your opponent's threats with making something useful for yourself. That is why I'm playing here the move knight to c3, because, well, he's bringing his queen to e7, which is strategically not what you want to do. You don't want to open your queen so early. Of course, he has a specific idea in mind, and sometimes strong players do break those strategic principles, chess principles, that hopefully you know that you bring the minor pieces first, the major pieces second. Of course, chess is a game of exceptions, so my opponent took here and then went to e4 with a knight. But overall, this strategy is not bringing him much because I play queen c2. Again, I deal with my opponent's threats, and at the same time, I develop a new piece and create a counter threat against him. His knight is now hanging. He plays d5, which is a cool move, of course, fighting for the center, defending against this threat. Yet I'm playing e3, and after knight to d7, I am playing bishop to d3, bringing all of my minor pieces into the game and creating a threat. This is the best case scenario where you simultaneously attack your opponent's piece, create a threat, and develop your piece. So you do something useful for yourself and create a problem for your opponent. Because all of those opening threats that I have mentioned before, obviously your opponent also has it, and if you can at the same time achieve your goals and stop your opponent from doing the same, that is 100 times better. If I can somehow prevent him from castling, that would create so many problems for him. Of course, it's not always possible, but that is always your goal, what you should focus your attention on. He played knight takes c3, and notice that he actually exchanged all of those active pieces that he had in the beginning, and meanwhile I have developed my stuff as well. I still fight for the center, and I obviously have now a more active position, even though the engine says, well, there is no problem at all, humanly speaking, and that arguably is much more important for you at this point. You're not gonna get a real human advantage if the engine says plus 2.0 or plus 0.4. It's not that important. Important is that you understand what's going on, what you're supposed to do, and that you feel comfortable playing the position. For example, here, I didn't care what is the engine evaluation. I was so happy with the position, and I'm actually pretty surprised to see that it's around equal, because it feels, and it was proven by this game, that I have so many more opportunities. That's what usually happens. Of course, you are playing against a human being, hopefully if you don't get to deal with cheaters. And for human beings, it's always more convenient to play when you have a lot of space, when your pieces are developed, and if you don't allow your opponent to do that, well, he's gonna get into trouble, and that's exactly what happened here. He castled. I did the same. Remember, it's one of the goals. And now after castles, I'm ready to get all into the attack. And now my opponent makes a move. The first mistake, at least according to my view of chess, he plays the move a5. To me, it feels very weird, and you see the engine is also not a big fan of it, because you're supposed to attack, you're supposed to be active in the center, create some problems, but instead my opponent makes a side move, which is, I don't even really get the idea behind that move. It's not like I'm afraid of queen to b4 necessarily. But okay, that happens so often that your opponent is making a weird move. What is your response? Do you try to immediately, I don't know, try to prove that he is wrong, try to attack this a5 pawn? Not at all. Remember, your task, like, you know what you should be doing. You should focus on your strategic idea. So remember, we have two crucial rules here to play a great game of chess, to win so much easier and more often. The first is always and always to fight for the initiative. We are fighting to be the one who creates threats. This is, like, a lot of people are asking me, what do you mean by fighting for the initiative? Well, you fight for that driver's seat, to be the one who actually makes the game here, who is dictating the terms. This is so crucial in chess, because if you win this battle, then we are going to come to the second step, and I'm going to help you with that as well. But then already your opponent's life is so much more difficult, because instead of thinking what he can do, he has to deal with your threats and just has to be in reactive mode to what you are doing, what questions that you're asking him, to the pressure that you apply on them, somehow to deal with it, instead of thinking about his own creative ideas, instead of being proactive. This is why it's so important that we always fight for it. It does not, however, mean that we must immediately do something about that weird move, or at least we think it's weird. Instead, we win time. We say, well, he made something weird, let me continue my idea, bring even more pieces, finish my development, fight for the center even more, and use all of that to my advantage. Now, I probably didn't figure out the main move, the best move. Here with the rook, you always have three good files for the rooks: C file, D file, and E file. I mean, in most of the cases, and you only have two rooks. And in vast majority of cases, we always do it the wrong way. And they say, don't waste so much time on it, just choose the reasonable squares, and that's what I did. Well, it was a little bit smarter to start with rook a to c1 and then decide where the second rook belongs. Anyway, I have got a very nice position here. I have also played the move e4. Like, this is exactly what you're aiming for to get in chess. You want to control fully your center. Of course, it's a little bit simpler as white, as you have an extra tempo, but if your opponent is not using this principle, is not fighting for the center as white himself, then of course as black he also wants to achieve exactly the same thing. Now those pawns, it's not like I want to necessarily checkmate my opponent immediately, but I want to take control of those central squares, which makes it so much more difficult for my opponent to create some play, to even finish his development, because the desirable move, I think, would have been e5 for him, but it's so difficult to implement. Right now it's not possible. Even if you play rook to e8, it's still not possible because of the back rank issues after all of the exchanges. So I thought I'm doing very well here. He played rook to d8, which seems like it's developing a rook, but still he doesn't have enough space for all of his pieces. I play rook to c1. Now I am officially done with my development, and I can think about the next steps, about the ways to create threats. Of course, like, strictly speaking, again, I haven't made the best move in the position. It was to put the bishop back, and by the way, my opponent mentioned that in the post-game analysis. If you are playing classical tournaments, real tournaments with real human beings, please always take time to analyze the game afterwards with your opponent. You are learning so much out of it. Please don't disregard this opportunity. So the point is, if I would have stepped back with the bishop, I would stopped his b pawn from moving, which in turn stops his bishop from being developed. And this way he was able to play the move b6, which I didn't think it's a problem, right? Why would I, instead of developing a new piece, bring my piece that is already developed back? It didn't seem reasonable at all. But sometimes to stop your opponent from achieving his goal, you need to make maybe some suboptimal moves for yourself. So you always, like, try to understand what the balance is, whether you achieve more with your move than you lose, or vice versa. And based on that balance, you choose the best possible alternative for yourself. Now, we have completed the first stage. We have fought for the initiative. I definitely have the initiative. I have more space here. My development is better. I have developed all of my pieces. Now we are coming to stage 2. Once you have the initiative, you absolutely must use it. The first World Chess champion, Wilhelm Steinitz, was the first one to say it, and now 150 years it is still the case. You absolutely have to use your momentum. Why? Because if you do nothing, then you give time to your opponent, and time is the most important resource in chess, and he will just play bishop to b7, rook to c8, finish his development, and then it's going to be so much more difficult for me to create problems. So, of course, I knew that, I was thinking about that, and I was calculating the most active move, and I came to a conclusion this is the right move, the move d5. I'm not gonna go too deep into all of the variations I had here, but the main point is I thought he cannot take all of the pawns on d5, because then I play bishop takes d5, attacking the rook. The position is so open, I'm better prepared for it, and I'm gonna just crush him. The queen is also coming to c7. So I was expecting him to take once with the c pawn and then jump with the knight, but that also doesn't work tactically. And instead, what he did was to take the pawn once with the e pawn and then to play the move c5, somehow trying to shut down the position. But that's exactly the point. It's not possible. And here I made the right move. I again felt that I have to use the initiative. So the point is not to spoil your opportunity. Once you are ready, once your pieces are optimized, please go on for it. Don't wait. Don't stay there waiting for your opponent either to deal with all of the problems or even to create his own threats, and then he's going to be the one in the driver's seat. So you're building that initiative in the first place to have those opportunities, but once you do have it, please use it to your advantage. You might be wondering, what is this magic board I use in my videos? It's called Chess.Not Evo, and I enjoy it so much. I have it for a year now. It completely transformed the way I play chess and I train chess, because I can play both on Lichess and chess.com online, but on a real board. It's a completely different experience, and I enjoy it a lot. I haven't had any major issues, and that's my favorite product from Chess.Not, because I have everything in one place. I have my books here, I have my studies here, I have my games, but they have so many different products according to your needs and your budget. The best part is, of course, you can use the link in the description as well as the promo code Journey to Grandmaster to get a big discount on all Chess.Not products. Now, back to video. So now I'm making the right move, the move d6. Right before my opponent can block it with the queen, I use my momentum, I attack, I make a move with the tempo, improving my position at the same time, because this pawn is very dangerous and it opens up my bishop on c4. But now after queen f6, I really want you to pause this video for a second and try to find the best move for white. It's so instructive, and you have a chance to find a better move than I did, because unfortunately I failed here and I want you to do better. Pause the video, find the best move for white. Alright, I hope you have found it, because I unfortunately didn't, and the irony here that the right move is following what I say in every single one of my videos. Remember, you should always start when you're considering your options with the most active opportunities: checks, captures, and threats. And guess what? The only possible check in this position is the right and only completely winning move. I did fail in this position, that it must be good. I have developed all of my pieces. I'm so active. I'm fully mobilized here. There has to be something. Unfortunately, I just couldn't believe that this beautiful sacrifice, bishop takes f7, is even an opportunity. And that's wrong, because there is a reason why I say you should always use this CCT system. Because if there is a great opportunity in the position, then the chance is very, very high then it's going to be either a check or a capture or a threat. And it's very important to start in this order, because I started with the second most active move in the position, which would be taking the queen, and I did that, and that spoils my entire advantage. But that move, bishop takes f7, is a check, and that is completely winning. The difficulty, of course, is that you have to sacrifice your bishop. let's consider the moves. Of course, you never make such a move without thinking about your opponent's moves, but you only need to consider what happens if he takes it. If he plays king f8 or king h8, you can stop your calculation immediately because you just won a pawn and you still have a beautiful position. You continue the attack. There is nothing to talk about. If he takes with the queen, however, it's relatively simple as well, because now we just attack, we bring a new piece into the attack. Remember, when you are attacking, it's always essential to bring as many pieces as possible, because that gives you more opportunities. But at the same time, once you have sacrificed, of course, your moves have to be very active. Otherwise, your opponent will just make use of those extra material. Now, the queen cannot leave this long diagonal, because otherwise my queen is coming with a check and there is nothing you can do about it. The only way to stay along the diagonal is to grab that pawn on a2, but after rook a1, the queen is actually trapped. It has 0 moves to go and black is absolutely busted. So okay, that's simple, but what about king takes f7? That is, like, if it would be only possible to take with a queen, then probably, hopefully at least, I would have found it. But because I knew that he could have taken with a king, I somehow didn't even start to properly calculate the variations. It crossed my mind for a second, but I haven't even started, unfortunately. And that's wrong. You have to be open-minded. Even if you just give up your bishop for a pawn, still try to continue the variation. So the idea is we also bring this queen to the diagonal. You cannot block it with the queen to e6, because knight g5 with a fork will win the queen and the game. And if you go backwards, which you should do, if you go to the e file, I play rook to e1. If you go to g6, you are not going to survive for long. Here I have, and this is the difficult part, because all of the moves are losing here for white, except for one that is completely winning. And that is kind of a quiet move. I mean, it does create a huge threat of just capturing the queen for free. It's quite big, but like when you sacrifice your bishop like that, you expect to continue attacking the king, right? And queen d5 does help with that, because apart from attacking that rook, let's say the rook moves somewhere, it creates a huge threat of bringing the knight to g5. And it turns out after knight g5, there is no way to stop all of this threats. This h7 pawn is just hanging. The king has nowhere to escape. And if you try to defend that pawn, then the knight is just coming to e8. Again, the king cannot hide because the queen is there. It's going to be discover checks. We're going to win all of the material. And if you go here to defend the rook, we don't even take, at least not immediately. We play rook to e1. And I mean, at this point, it's clear that black is absolutely lost in this position. So many threats, starting with knight f4 and knight d8, everything is falling apart. And that would be a fantastic finish for this. Like, I have built the foundation, I have done everything right, but unfortunately, I have completely missed this final blow. This is why both of these crucial rules are so important. First, fight for the initiative, and then use the initiative once you have it. Instead, I took on f6. I did not do it because I wanted just to exchange the queens and go to the endgame. No, I had very specific ideas in mind. Unfortunately, I have just underestimated my opponent's defense here. Of course, you cannot stake with the knight. That is basically winning for me. I play knight e5, and if you block it, I take the bishop, I play d7, then I double my rooks, come to c6, and there is nothing you can do about it. But my opponent takes with the pawn, and I was anticipating it. But unfortunately, I mean, this is so tough. This pawn is grabbing those squares away, so I can never play knight e5 or knight g5, and that spoils all of my chances. I played rook e1. That was my idea, to prepare rook to e7, but that's another not a great move, because he just plays knight f8. And to give him credit, he found all of the right defensive moves here. And now rook e7 doesn't work, because he brings his bishop, and I might even get into trouble, because this pawn on d6, my best pawn, is actually hanging, and the more pieces we trade, the weaker it becomes. And so at this point I realized that I have spoiled it. It was clear to me, but still we have to continue the game somehow. It's a very important game. I play against a very strong opponent, and if I'm not careful enough, it could backfire even more, and I could even lose. So it's important to hold yourself together and still, okay, accept you have missed your chances, but still continue in the best possible way. And I have found a very creative move here, knight to d2. Why? Because when you don't know what to do, if the obvious idea doesn't work, you ask yourself a question: what is the worst placed piece in my position? And after this queen takes f6 move, the worst placed piece is this knight on f3, because it cannot go forward at all. And so I want to relocate it all the way to e4. Now if you take on d6, I am in a good shape after knight to e4, threatening to take the rook, the pawn on f6, you cannot go to c6 because of bishop d5, so I would be in the driver's seat again there. But my opponent is very smart, very strong player. He made the right move, bishop to e6. And now after takes and takes, if I would be able to make 2 moves in a row here, I would be absolutely great. Those 2 moves are a4 and knight to c4. That would be close to victory for me, because he's gonna have those weak pawns. I still save the d6 pawn, everything is great. Unfortunately, that's not possible according to the chess rules, and if I play one of those 2 moves, then I always have disadvantages. If I play knight c4, he can play b5, and then this pawn is hanging. That's not so great. I played a4 instead, but then the drawback is that he's just in time to take that pawn on d6, and I don't have my main advantage anymore. Knight c4, I do have the compensation for a pawn, but it's clear that I'm not really fighting for a win anymore. Still, it was important not to mess it up. Very important game. I played rook d1. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter if the position doesn't feel to be that great. You still fight for the initiative. That first principle applies. If you are becoming passive, then eventually your opponent will come and convert his advantage into a full point. So you have to create those threats, and that's what I did. My opponent seemingly makes a very active move, stops my threat, but that opens up my second rook, which of course I also used to my advantage. I played here the move rook to e7. I want to be as active as possible. He plays rook b8, which makes total sense. He includes another piece that was not active at all up to this point, and he wants to play b5. Again, now my rook on d1 is the worst placed piece. It's not doing anything, so I improve it. I play rook to e1. This is the open file. Remember that rooks love open files. He plays b5, and it's getting very sharp. I thought about taking on a5, but that is very, very aggressive, and I'm not sure what the conclusion is going to be. Instead, because I was in a time trouble, I wanted to be safe here. I realized, okay, I'm not winning anymore, but at least let me get out of trouble. So I took here on e8. I mean, of course, normally I would still dream about some chances if my opponent allows me, but it's clear that objectively the position is not better for me anymore. I took it on b5. He takes it back, and now I just played the move g3 because I don't want to get into full trouble here, not to risk getting checkmated, so I just played the move g3. It was clear for me that those pawns are so weak that I will be able to grab one of them. He played knight d6. Of course, it's possible to take, but this time I took on a5 with my knight, creating a counter threat. He plays rook to a6. Now my rook and my knight are hanging, and normally I would just lose here, but thank God I have this move rook to d8, counterattacking his knight, and after takes and takes, he did offer me a draw. I have declined it because I wanted to see, like, formally I have a little bit of an advantage because the pawn structure is better for me, but yeah, rooks endgame, there almost always are a draw. So I tried a little bit here. He played f5. I made the move f4 because I wanted to stop him from coming, but after rook b3 I realized there is nothing I can do here. My plan would be to bring my king over to protect that b2 pawn, and then my rook is free, or yeah, to put some pressure on that c pawn and slowly improve my king. But the problem is I will never be fast enough with that. His king is gonna come, and I might even risk losing if I'm not careful. So I just played king f2, accepting, not winning. I have spoiled my advantage. I offered a draw, and my opponent accepted it. That was the game. I didn't play perfect, even though my accuracy is pretty strong, and I was the one with real chances for a victory. I have implemented the first step pretty good, but unfortunately I have spoiled the second one. Both rules, both stages are crucially important, and I make my videos to help you with mastering both of those principles. In this video, I share with you a simple strategy to make your opponent's life as miserable as possible. It helped so many of my students improve their chess so much.